Good evening, St. Lucia. Welcome to another SLP Town Hall Tuesday. I'm your host, Mondi Lewis, and tonight I have with me two of the best minds in St. Lucia. I have Mr. Martin Satney, who is the former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Physical Development, Environment and Housing. Good evening, Mr. Satney. And next to me, I have the soon-to-be parliamentary representative for Soufrière-Forcé-Jacques, Ms. Emma Hippolyte, who is the St. Lucia Labour Party's endorsed candidate. Good evening, Sister Emma.
Good evening, Mondi, and good evening, St. Lucia. Good evening, Soufrière. Good evening, people.
Okay, good evening.
Interesting times.
Indeed.
Interesting times.
Indeed.
Very interesting times.
St. Lucia, every time we seem to come to you on an SLP Town Hall Tuesday, it is with yet another injustice by this government. But all hope is not lost. The St. Lucia Labour Party has a plan to move this country forward, a plan to put you, the people of St. Lucia, first. And there has been much outrage from last week moving into this week, a lot of misinformation, a lot of lies propagated by the government of Alan Chastney. And St. Lucia, I know that as a people I have seen, I've been part of the discussions, that we will not stand for this latest scar in our patrimony. And I call it just another litany, a part of the litany of sins of this government, honestly. When will it end? We have DSH, the risk to the mangroves, giving away of 1,000 acres of land to Teotihuacan, and a proposed causeway to Maria Island. We have Cabot, so let's not forget this Cabot fiasco, which is ongoing. Still a lot of unanswered questions. The NIC, the pension money from the NIC, which belongs to the people of St. Lucia. We have, again, remember the demolition of the Royal Jail, even if there was a legal undertaking by this government of the St. Lucia National Trust. The closure of Radio St. Lucia, the guardian of our audio records. St. Lucia, it seems to be a pattern by this government to desecrate, sacrilege, everything that belongs to St. Lucia, that things that are truly St. Lucian. And we have a minister who came out and really just lied to the country. But I suppose we shouldn't be surprised by his utterances, because it seems to be the trend with this government. So we will take a listen to a statement by Honorable Herod Stanislaus. And right now I don't even know about some of these titles, but we will respect the office, and we will take in a statement by Mr. Stanislaus on this whole Peter, again, another fiasco, another scar for St. Lucia.
The government of St. Lucia acknowledges the concern regarding the development of a private dwelling house at the base of the Pitons and within the Pitons management area. Let me first start by saying that as the Minister for Physical Planning and a proud product of the community of Soufrière, I treasure our World Heritage Site, Pitons. On behalf of the government of St. Lucia, I want to reassure the nation that the Department of Physical Planning and the Development Control Authority has abided by the laws and the rules governing the Pitons management area, and at no time was any aspect of the development in question approved that would threaten the designation of the Pitons management area as a World Heritage Site. The guidelines for the PMA were developed by the government of St. Lucia and are contained in the PMA and the Soufrière Region Integrated Development Plan, otherwise known as the Hyder Report 2008, and the Limits of Acceptable Change LAC Study of 2013. It is important that everyone, however, understand and recognize the history of the estate in question, which falls under Block 0025B, Parcel 4, measuring 76.6 acres located within the Pitons Management Area, PMA, an area known as Asivoin. The property was agreed to be sold by Mondesi Estates to a business executive from Canada in January of 2015 under the tenure of the former administration. In a letter dated October 2015, the lawyers for the new prospective Canadian owner wrote to then Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. Kenny Anthony, seeking incentives pursuant to the Special Development Area Act. In his letter, the lawyer indicated that the property was being acquired from the Mondesi family in Soufrière for the purposes of constructing a large multi-family villa and other amenities to be used as vacation unit and luxury rental units. The lawyer further stated in his letter to Dr. Anthony, and I quote, "Most of the property is located in the restricted no-build area of the World Heritage Site, and as such, it is the client's desire to have designed and erected an eco-friendly luxury property to be enjoyed by visitors in keeping with the area." After reviewing the LAC report and discussions with the relevant ministry, the client is satisfied and as such is looking to close the sale on Friday, 30th October 2015, end of quote. By letter dated December 28th, 2015, then Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. Kenny Anthony, granted the proposed buyer the status of an approved developer. The exact quote from Dr. Anthony's letter reads, "Subject to the resolution of all outstanding issues regarding the status of that part of the property which falls within the World Heritage Site, I am pleased to advise you that pursuant to Section 4 of the said Act, Mr. Jeffrey Rubilad has been granted the status of approved developer," end of quote. That designation entitled the property owner, according to Dr. Anthony, to a 50% waiver on stamp duty and vendor's tax. The announcement of this decision by Dr. Anthony also appeared publicly in the January 25, 2016 issue of the St. Lucia Gazette. The deed of sale for the property is dated 19th January 2016, also during the tenure of the Dr. Anthony administration. It was not until September 2016 that this current administration became aware of this sale via an application submitted to the DCA for a touristic proposal for land use and concept for approximately 0.4 hectares or 1 acre of the area, which also proposed a long list of amenities to be built. The technical staff at the DCA conducted an assessment and appraisal of the proposal and made a recommendation for rejection of the plans submitted by the developer. The staff of the ministry made these recommendations on the basis that the proposed development site falls within Policy Area 1 of the Pitons Management Area and according to the design guide of the limits of acceptable change study of 2013, which means that our administration rejected the initial plans of the developer due to the fact that it was not in keeping with the rules which govern the area. On March 14, 2017, the applicant submitted another application to the DCA for approval in principle for land use and concept to construct a one-story single-family residential building on 2,640.4 square meters on the same area. This was a completely redesigned structure which the DCA advised had met the criteria of the LAC study. Hence, approval was granted for a structure which keeps to the guidelines and aesthetics of the area. The approved construction is in an area which had already featured an estate house. I wish to make it clear that at all times, the DCA and the Ministry of Physical Planning have been monitoring this development to ensure it is in keeping with the guidelines. As regards to this property, at no time has the DCA approved any new development within the no-build zone of the Pitons Management Area. I wish to reiterate, the property under discussion was sold and the purchaser declared an approved developer in 2015 during the Kenny Anthony administration. Our government has simply ensured that the development is in keeping with the guidelines of the Pitons management area.
So there you have it. Lots of muddying of the waters, lots of literal blatant lies from Mr. Stanislaus. But you know, Dr. Anthony issued a response and clearly explains the letter, which again, Herod Stanislaus read out to you, subject to the approval. But I didn't say it. Let Dr. Anthony explain it in his own words, because St. Lucians, you know, this misinformation, these lies being perpetuated by this government, you know, I think they really have no respect for us as people of St. Lucia, and we really have to do something about it, or else we truly will be sold as a people. So let's take a listen to Dr. Anthony's response on the matter.
Now you'll notice that my letter was very carefully worded, and there was a reason for this, Chris. The fact of the matter is, part of the land that was sold was not in the PMA. Part was in the PMA. And recognizing that part was in the PMA, I worded the letter very carefully to say, quote, subject to the resolution of all outstanding issues regarding the status of that part of the property which falls within the World Heritage Site. So there was no question that the administration was aware that part of the land fell in the PMA, but in any event, there were issues there to be resolved before any construction could take place.
So the assertion is that you should have not given him approved developer status because of that.
Let us be very clear of what approved developer status is. Approved developer status is not approved status to construct a property or put on buildings on a site. No Prime Minister on his own has such authority. Approved developer status under the Special Development Areas Act, and incidentally, Soufrière was always designated as a special development area. That simply meant by its inclusion that approved developer status was granted for the purpose of receiving the concessions under the Act. Incidentally, the concession on stamp duty and, of course, vendor's tax was provided for the benefit of the St. Lucian family, who, of course, had decided that they would sell the land to the Canadian investor. So there's not a question that it was the investor who was getting the benefit of the concessions. Rather, it was a St. Lucian family. And we have to bear in mind that St. Lucians are entitled to own and dispose of their property. But the fact of the matter is that the letter was very carefully worded. It meant that the concessions were only applicable if there were resolution, or if there was a resolution of the issue of constructing close to the PMA, near the PMA, or even within the area within the PMA permitted by the various reports for some kind of construction activity. There was no question of that, about that. But what is interesting, Christopher, is this. Herod Stanislaus chooses in his statement only to cite specific events in the course of this issue. He never makes mention, for example, that in 2018, a residential application by the developer was in fact rejected by the DCA. And of course, the list of approvals is available by the Office of the Planning Department for Public Scrutiny. That denial of the application was in fact crossed over by the chairman of the DCA, marked approved. And what is interesting, of course, is that he makes absolutely no mention of events from 2019 onwards, when various applications were presented to the DCA by the developer. To the credit of the DCA, They rejected some of these applications, and of course our good friend Harold Stanislaus refuses to explain why is it that the application had to be sent to the cabinet for the cabinet to give approval for the development to take place. Now you are telling me that that is a pious government, a government that of course acted in accordance with strict principles. That's what you want to tell. That's what you want to tell me. Against that kind of background, against that kind of history, they need to explain, for example, whether in respect of the first approval for the residential building, that in fact the PMAC, that is a committee that looks over and protects the PMA, was given the opportunity to comment on that first development. They need to explain all of those things. But I want to just go one step further, Christopher, and add. If this government was pious, as it claims, as I said, if it was that sacrosanct, if it cared for the patrimony of St. Lucia, as it said that it was, and mind you, they're accusing me, because I put in language in the approval of concessions, warning that in truth and in fact, you had to resolve all those issues that impacted on the PMA before anything could proceed. In other words, setting the stage for others to follow, to bear in mind that these are the challenges that have to be met. If they were that sacrosanct and that pious, why didn't they acquire the property in the interest of the people of St. Lucia? Even when they were going through the process of approvals for the property, they could have said, all right, we'll do the right thing. We made a mistake with Cabot. We caused enough problems with Cabot. Let's acquire the property. And, of course, and do something. Perhaps St. Lucians will feel relieved that at last we have done something in the interest of preserving the environment and the patrimony. That was available for them to do. There's nothing to prevent them from acquiring the property. So all this sanctimonious behavior, in my own personal view, is unjustified, misplaced, and is not really in accordance with the circumstances that prevail. I think what we need to do now is to get into the history of this matter, particularly the events in 2019, which led Cabinet to make the decision that the development must go on. These are the crucial events.
So St. Lucia, there you have it. Perspective and truth, not the blatant lies of this government. And Dr. Anthony, he ended by saying that let us go into the history of this matter. But more importantly for us is going to be the way forward on how do we resolve development on what is essentially the St. Lucian identity. You hear of the Peters and you instantly think of St. Lucia. But before I get to my guest this evening, we have to take a break. So we will be back, St. Lucia. This is SLP Town Hall Tuesday. Welcome back, St. Lucia, to SLP Town Hall Tuesday. Again, my guest, Mr. Martin Satney, who is a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Physical Development, Environment and Housing, and also the endorsed candidate, soon-to-be parliamentary representative for Soufrière-Forcé-Jacques, Ms. Emma Hippolyte. We left off with a video by Dr. Anthony explaining this developer status, which was subject to the approval of DCA, who is the only authority in St. Lucia for persons to be able to build. But as Dr. Anthony said, more importantly was how did we get here? What is the history behind World Heritage status? What does the Peter management area represent to us as St. Lucia? And why does this area need to be protected?
That's a mouthful, man. Okay, let me start off. First and foremost, I will not go into all the nitty-gritty of about all the attributes and features of the Peter management area. Our viewers can probably, there are two websites I will give, and they will probably go into these, and then, which is, the first one is the local one, which is the PMA, the PMA's website, which is pma.govt.lc. Well, www.pmagovt.lc. And the second one is the World Heritage Center's UNESCO website, which is whc.unesco.org. unesco.org. So anyone who's interested in getting all the details regarding the Piton management area and all the technical issues and the processes and so on, they can get all these issues there. But in terms of the process and the issues at hand, I think I need to articulate the fact that there was, before we got to the stage of designation and inscription of the site in June 30th, 2004, that actual meeting of UNESCO was held in China, and Mr. Giles Romulus was the one who attended. So prior to that, there was the formation of what you call, there were two entities locally. There was a local, what you call a World Heritage Committee, and there was a committee called the PMAC,
Yes.
the Piton Management Area Advisory Committee. That committee was made up of a core group of stakeholders. Primarily, the leading ones were the Soufrière Regional Development Foundation, you had the St. Lucia National Trust, you had the SMMA, and the Ministry of Physical Development as representing government. There were other representatives, members from the local community and so forth. Landowners in particular was a big one, because at the time the big challenge was the question of land ownership. Because the Piton management area is really a natural site, but it's a mixed natural site in terms of ownership of property because of mixed development. That is because people were already living there, and there were communities within the PMA based on the boundary. And just to quickly, many persons tend to have a false understanding of what the PMA is. Let me just deal with that one first and foremost, and then it's made up of two parts. There is the land-based part, what we call the terrestrial part. The land-based part, which is made up of a little over 1,100 hectares, which is probably about close to, multiply that 2.4, you get to about close to 3,000 acres. Then there is the marine component, which is the component which is supposed to be managed more directly by the SMMA, because the SMMA was already in existence. And so the Piton management area comprises of those two components. The marine component is limited to 1 kilometer from the coastline.
Okay.
A distance of 11 kilometers along the coast, right? So from to the southern end to Ansivoine, the mouth of Ansivoine, up to the bordering with the town of Soufrière. That is where that coastline there, that is considered. But the main challenge was the question of how do you manage a mixed development site like that, with
Okay, but
so many conflicts.
Before we get even into managing the area, why was it important for us to have World Heritage status?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a different question, right? The question of World Heritage status, there is a history to it.
Okay.
That's what I didn't want to get into, because
Okay.
it
Or
starts.
what are the benefits from of a country
Because
having World Heritage status?
it all emerged from a series of studies that were done by the OAS, right? Organization of American States, way back in the early 80s. And then there was based on those studies, one of the key recommendations coming out was to see how the area can be, the Piton, especially the area, the two Pitons and the Piton meter, the ridge which is between them. That area really should have been designated. There was the move by the National Trust to see how if we could designate that as a national park, right?
Okay.
As a national park. Then there was a lot of controversy. Let me just leave it at that, between as to whether, and then it so turned out that there was a development at the Jalousie area, the M Group, the Iranian investor, and there were all sorts of problems with that. That evolved into why not, based on the series of studies that were done by the OAS and the various consultants, elevate this to see how we can transform that site into a World Heritage site on the basis of its natural beauty, on the basis of its cultural heritage, the fact that you have the geologic aspect of it, which is within a very small, really the Piton Management Area technically compared to other world-renowned sites, is a very small area.
Well, I remember we were just before you saying peace. So this is a world phenomenon for
this
other
is
people.
a
This
world
is not
phenomenon.
something
So it
peculiar
is-
to Saint
so-
Lucia.
Right. So it was recognized that within this relatively small space of just a little over 7,000 acres, you have a diverse mix of geologic activity. You have rare species of flora and fauna, including with the marine component, as well as the historic cultural aspect related to the Amerindians. In fact, the Pitons, as you were recognized as gods by the Amerindians, and so on. The Petit Piton was seen as the god of fertility and food. The Gros Piton, or vice versa, I can't remember quite clearly which one it is now. And the other one was really the Yakahu, god of fire, thunder, and rain, and Atibira, fertility and food. These were the two Pitons. And because of the stunning beauty and outstanding
Yes.
magnificence of the Pitons, it was recognized with the sulfur springs, that volcanic center of activity, right? Surrounded by this lush greenness, right, of vegetation and marine life, the reefs and unique flora and fauna, that this was an area of outstanding universal value and had to be recognized. So here, National Trust began to push this process, okay? Fast forward, then we ended up with the whole issue of the designation in June of 2004. And the issue was then, how do you proceed in managing a mixed
protecting it.
and protecting? Because I remember we were having a series of meetings all over Soufrière, Soisel, and the surrounding communities regarding how, because persons were very concerned about the use and how they were going to be able to utilize their lands and how they were going to be able to develop their lands. So all those challenges and potential conflicts, and that is why the Piton Management Area Advisory Council was put together and it remained a permanent fixture to this day to ensure that whatever was approved within the LACs, the limits of acceptable change study, any development that takes place, and I hope you can quote me, any development, because it doesn't mean that development is going to take place based on the zonation of the area. So at the end of the day, the Piton Management Office and the Advisory Committee, they are there to ensure that they serve as a referral agency to the DCA to ensure that whatever development is taking place, it is taking place according to the approved guidelines.
So, Mr. Sati, I mean, that's a lot of history, which I'm sure that a lot of St. Lucians, especially persons my age, and maybe yours, are not aware of. But I think one thing that we all agree on is that the Pitons belong to us.
The Pitons belong to us, and not only that, I think the challenge has been, there has not been the real, the average local citizen, in particular between Soisel, Soufrière, and so on, those persons who historically have been interfacing with the environment, have been interfacing with the area, and they've been using it for the various livelihoods, whether it be the agricultural activity, whether it be for fishing, whether it be for the handicrafts and so on. So persons have been engaging within that area, and the idea is, if you now have a World Heritage Site, what are the value-added benefits
Exactly.
that should engender from this towards the locals in particular.
Well, that's a good question for
Right.
Honorable
And what we
Nicholas.
see, but the point is, what we see now is the same persons who owned major properties. They're the ones who continue to enjoy the best of the Peto management area. And the average local citizen has not, in a meaningful way, right? Particularly the younger ones who are coming now to see, how do I benefit from this?
Yes.
Right? We know it is an area of outstanding universal beauty, and we would like to conserve it, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to benefit from it as well.
Sister Emma, you are on the ground in Soufrière Fossé Jacques. You will contest the next general election for the St. Lucia Labour Party and win that seat and become the parliamentary representative. What has been the discussions going on in Soufrière? What are the people saying that, of this desecration of the Petos by, again, a UWP administration which has no regard for the laws of St. Lucia, and we continue to see that over their tenure in government. What has been the feedback from your constituents on this matter?
Thank you, Mondi. As I sit there, I like the question that you've asked, but I just want to say that as I sit here listening to Brother Satney giving that background, and I'm using more my knowledge of structures and systems, and maybe some of the things that has not happened is, yes, some of the things that I'm sitting there listening to, some of the things that has not happened is putting all what has happened there in the context that if you go to any infant school, primary school in Soufrière, the children know there's the Petos there, and that's that.
Yes.
Nothing else. It's just there. It's just the hills. The only thing you know about it is the height. I can remember as a child, you taught the height. A lot of things has happened. And before I even answer your question, one of the things I want to put down is the fact that we ought to ensure that we cause our education system to address this matter ASAP.
Yes.
Very true.
It is fundamental to our economy, to the Soufrière economy, to St. Lucia's economy, nationally. And we have just not, we just think everybody will know about it. So somehow we need to mandate that it be part of the education system that we have, that somewhere in there, not only part of the education system, that our children experience it. Because I can remember much younger, as a guide, you were supposed to climb this mountain and that mountain. The children, we go to bathe in the sulfur springs. But I'm not sure the average child has reached anywhere close to the Piton. I mean, I know we have we run the scouts, even the average
cadets.
Yes. So I think these are things that we need to put down to cause our people to feel what we have and appreciate it. I mean, we run an Airbnb and we have visitors coming in every day. They hike there, they go up there. I mean, it's important for them. This is the challenge of a lifetime. They pay tickets to come in, and our own people are just there. The thing is just there, over there, and we don't appreciate it. What we know is that it defines us.
Yes.
When we see this speak anywhere in the world, it defines us. And that is why I could not believe that Parliamentary Rep Harold Stanislaus has allowed this thing to happen. He's representing, not only is the Minister for Physical Planning, he is representing Soufrière. And I cannot understand that my dear friend Bradley Felix has allowed this disaster to happen in his constituency. I cannot believe that.
Yes.
And the people must be angry at them for that. And when I went in and saw, I visited Seymour about 3 weeks ago, I was surprised as well when the Honorable Harold Stanislaus invited people on Saturday to go up there with him. I couldn't believe that. He is the minister. He is where he has been dealing with this matter. He's only now calling people to go up there with him as if, what are they going to protect him now?
Mm-hmm.
But you know the most amazing thing about this is, as was articulated by Dr. Anthony, is if you were proceeding with a development, okay, and it was very clear that in 2016, whatever, the DCA did not approve whatever proposed development. And then they came back in March 2017 with another one. But the National Trust does not know anything about it. The Peter Management Office does not know anything about it. Because if you are going to do a development within the policy area 1, which is the no-build zone area, right? This means you have to get, and there is a proposal put forward by a developer, you would have had to undertake an environmental impact assessment.
Yes.
Right? And the key referral agencies knew nothing about it. So it means someone, somebody, or some entity there was an abridge of the process.
Yes.
Right? Of how you end up with structures presently under construction at the base of the Peter. Now, just before Sister Emma, I just wanted to make, as we zero in on that particular development, I want to make it clear that the Gros Peter in particular, just for persons to understand the land ownership aspect, 50% of all the lands within the PMA, just a little over 50% is owned by the state.
Okay.
Right? The rest is private ownership. Right? Now, I've heard persons talking about why didn't the government buy it and so on and so forth. Right? Let's take it one by one. The Petit Piton, the majority of Petit Piton is owned by the Crown, by the state. It's just a very small piece towards the northern base of the Petit Piton is private. The Gros Piton is 50% of, about 50% of the Gros Piton, the lower segment of it, right, is privately owned. Most of it is privately owned, right? And there are several families who own from large, well, this one was, this particular area was about 70-something. There are those with 50-something. There are those going right down to persons with just very small quantities, about an acre or even less, right? So it's a fairly large list of persons who own properties on the Gros Piton, and there is a history to it. We all know it. This whole thing came from the Fongenlib, the history of Fongenlib and the Mont-Lacroix people and the people from Deville and all those areas. These were persons who from the who freed them. These were freed slaves who from the Negmawan. Well, I don't like to call them Negmawan. The brigands.
The brigands.
They were their ancestors were the brigands, and so they were able to free themselves and develop those communities there and maintain very sustainable livelihoods in those areas. Okay? So what was left was, how do you, when on designation, the government of St. Lucia at that time in 2004 was left with the decision as to how do you manage the private component of the Gros Piton, right? Because it was stated clearly that policy area 1 primarily is a no-build zone, almost untouchable, not negotiable.
Yes.
Right? And the World Heritage Center was very clear on that. Yeah. They said if we give it to you, that is one of the key conditions. It's made up of the Gros Piton, it's made of the Petit Piton, and it's made of the Piton meter, which is the ridge between the two. Right? The lower part of the ridge was donated to the state. A great portion of it was donated to the state by Lord Tenants as part of the Bow Estate thing. So that area also is owned by the state. Okay? So at the end of the day, the government was left to, how do we manage those things? There were two options, and the World Heritage Center agreed with the two proposals. Option 1 was you acquire those private lands on Gros Piton, right? And also whatever,
which we haven't done.
Which we haven't done. Both the state has not done it. And I'm not going into the politics of this government and that administration. The state has not done that. The second option left to the state was to manage what you call a stewardship land management program.
Yes.
Stewardship land management program refers to the state getting into some agreement, some arrangement with the property owners that they will keep the lands in a pristine and manner, and they will not compromise the integrity of the land and so on. That will, in a manner that it will affect the universal status of the universal beauty of the area and so on. So that area, I think the second option was more the way that was being looked at. Yeah, because at that time in 2004, and St. Lucia, if I remember clearly, was simply emerging out of the 9/11 disaster, and the economy was just about picking up. So the amount of resources you would require, if you had, you would need if you were to acquire all those lands, was quite big. So I think the government leaned more towards the stewardship aspect. So I just wanted to clear that aspect of it first, and then, but of course the rest of the property, of the lands, the sulfur springs, the diamonds, the diamond area, the Mont Kubaril, the Safis, and the Fondouz, and the Dauphine Estate, La Dauphine Estate. All of these are private lands,
which fall within
all of which fall within the Peter management area. It goes as far back as Esperance Close. It borders with the road that goes to Fort Saint-Jacques, and it comes down to the just before you take Etangs, into the Ivrogne River, and the Ivrogne River, the northern boundary of the Ivrogne River, is the southern boundary of the PMA.
Sister Emma, I mean, you had to weigh in on this in terms of the impact and issues for the people of Soufrière.
Yes, significant implications for us. And you are right as it relates to the land ownership, because Esperance Estate, I own Esperance Estate.
Yes.
And you're right, I have owned it for a long time, long before this World Heritage status. And at one point, contemplating subdivision, I had to write to the PMAC to ask what it is I can and cannot do with my land. So I understood the implication that it had, and I mean, it was a decision I just had to defer. And I'm in Area 3. I'm not even in Area 1 and 2. I'm in Area 3. Right. Much less up in Area 1. And it is clear, but when I listened to the statement by Honorable Stanislas, he indicated that the government did everything within the law. But that is in conflict with what I am reading here, the statement by the government. Because the statement by the government read very clearly from the LAC study, the section on development policy, PCA 1C. And I'm reading it again. It says small-scale development in the Sivon River Valley, setback from the beach, will be considered if it meets the full limits of acceptable change and design guide for the PMA World Heritage Site.
That's right.
Such development would be restricted to local needs and or for conservation purposes. It could, for example, be a scheme that provides opportunities for local employment, for accommodation, and in bracket it says, but only for local people, and or for historic feature conservation. So what they have approved there does not fit into this.
Well, it speaks to, again, the untruths of this government, of Herod Stanislas, in the statement that he has made directly. Again, we've been told, and we've seen a letter from Clem Bob, who is the chairman of the DCA. We're being told that this went against the recommendations
of the
staff of the DCA. And here we have it. Why are we hearing about silent meetings with developers, lawyers, secret meetings with developers? This issue going to be discussed at a cabinet level. It just seems very shady, and this government is very selective in what they put out, and a lot of misinformation is going out. And I just want to backtrack a little in terms of the special development area and when he spoke to the developer status that was granted. St. Lucia, this this area is not even limited to just Soufrière.
That's right.
This area stretches as far as Micoud and then comes all the way back up to Ancillary. So when people are saying, but why did Dr. Anthony give approval in subject, again, that is the word.
The qualifying.
Subject to you undertaking all the necessary steps and approval by the DCA. So if somebody were to build, let's say in Ancillary, for instance, they would be able to access these concessions. They would write, and again, not just foreigners, locals. And I think, you know, this government is really just downright lying to persons, and they're strangers to the truth. They're muddying the waters on this issue. Anyone who wants to create any sort of development within that area, whether that area falls within Ancillary, Micoud, Choiseul, Vieux Fort, they can apply, and the letter would be the same.
That's right.
So let's forget that it was even on the Pitons.
Right.
Anywhere.
Could have been in Choiseul as well.
It could have been in Choiseul.
Yeah.
Could have been in Vieux Fort.
Yeah.
That letter would have said the same thing, St. Lucia. I could have applied for the concessions if I wanted to build within the special development area, which by law states where development can take place. So again, the government is misleading our people, and really we need Honorable Harold Stanislaus to answer St. Lucia. Why did Clem Bob himself and Guy Joseph unilaterally give permission for this development? St. Lucia, this is an SLP Town Hall Tuesday. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back, St. Lucia. You're viewing the SLP Town Hall Tuesday. My guest again, former Permanent Secretary, Mr. Martin Satney from the Ministry of Physical Development, Housing and the Environment. And I have the endorsed candidate for Soufrière-Forcé-Jacques, soon to be parliamentary representative for Soufrière, Ms. Emma Hippolyte. We were going through the history of the World Heritage status of the Pitons. This government, again, blatant lies, St. Lucia misleading, muddying the waters, and again, not taking responsibility for the actions, for the desecration of our patrimony. I'd now like you to listen to a statement from the St. Lucia Labour Party on this whole Piton fiasco, because it is indeed something that we all should be ashamed of.
The St. Lucia Labour Party stands in solidarity with thousands of St. Lucians at home and abroad who have expressed concern and outrage over the location, scale, and nature of a development ongoing at the southern tip of the Piton Management Area World Heritage Site at Eschivoi. And the party is appalled, though not surprised, by the attempt of the United Workers' Party government, through a statement by its Minister of Physical Planning, Honorable Harold Stanislaus, to mask its questionable role in disapproval of this development. Under the Kenny-Anthony administration, the Piton Management Area was declared an environmental protection area under the Physical Planning Act, and in June 2004, it was declared a World Heritage Site, number 1161 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Sadly, this latest development controversy at Eschivoi falls within what is known as Policy Area 1 of the Piton Management Area, PMA, as identified within the Limits of Acceptable Change Study, LAC, of December 2013, as an area of essentially no development. The LAC was commissioned by the Kenny-Anthony administration in keeping with the requirements of the World Heritage Committee, so as to determine where, how, and to what scale development could occur within the PMA. The LAC included a detailed design guide to which developments were to conform, including inter alia provisions to guide density, maximum buildable slopes, maximum building footprint, building height restrictions, colors of roof and walls, guidance on material to minimize visual impact, visibility assessments, and the requirements for environmental impact statements. The LAC was endorsed by Cabinet Conclusion 527 of 2013. The specific parcel of land within which the development is being undertaken has portions within as well as outside the PMA World Heritage Site. As such, the Development Control Authority was duty-bound to follow the law and the requirements as set out by the Limits of Acceptable Change study for the portions within the PMA. The Limits of Acceptable Change study outlines the following for Enchivoy, and I quote, Development Policy PCA 1C, small-scale development in the Enchivoy River Valley. Setback from the beach will be considered if it meets the full limits of acceptable change and design guide for the PMA World Heritage Site. Such development would be restricted to local needs and/or for conservation purposes. It could, for example, be a scheme that provides opportunities for local employment, for accommodation, but only for local people, and/or for historic feature conservation. Such development would allow for the replacement of the existing ad hoc beach facilities with sustainable, managed, low key beach facilities set back from the beach, all in accordance with the design guide. Unlike the majority of the Policy Area 1, this site has potential because it is not easily visible. End of quote. Page 71 of the LAC Study 2013. What has now become of concern is whether the Development Control Authority undertook the due processes under the Physical Planning Act so as to ensure that the current development meets the requirement of limit of acceptable change. The usual UWP attempt at blaming Kenny Anthony. However, in a typical fashion, the United Workers' Party has attempted to cast blame on Dr. Kenny Anthony, the former St. Lucia Labour Party Prime Minister, by trying to suggest he approved the development within the PMA, instead of dealing with the substantive matter related to physical development. The Physical Development Minister, Honorable Harold Stanislaus, has sought to shift blame by wrongly suggesting that approved developer under the Special Development Area Act somehow bound the state or the DCA. This is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, the Special Development Area Act clearly states at Section 5, and I quote, an approved developer shall comply with any law in force in respect of land development. End of quote. Put very simply, an approved developer under the Special Development Area Act does not make you an approved developer under the Physical Development Act. The developer would still have to apply as per normal to the Development Control Authority. The minister needs to give full disclosure. Moreover, the minister has failed to provide full disclosure as to what has transpired regarding the development at Enchivoy. He should therefore answer the following questions. 1. Is it true that the Cabinet of Ministers directed that approval be granted for the development? 2. Is it true that the plans for the villa currently under construction were approved for unilaterally by the chairman of the Development Control Authority in the year 2018? 3. Is it true that this unilaterally approved application was never considered by the Pito Management Area Advisory Committee, the PMAC, nor the DCA Board as required by law? 4. Is it true, therefore, that the PMAC never saw or considered the plans for the villa under construction? 5. Is it true that the recommended maximum building footprint for residential buildings as set out within the limits of acceptable change is 2,000 square feet? And if so, then why was a building of 2,846 square feet, as stated by Minister Stanislas, approved? 6. Is it true that an environmental impact statement was never required of the developer by the Development Control Authority as per the limits of acceptable change study? 7. Is it true that Ministers Guy Joseph and Herod Stanislas asked to personally meet the developer, and that there was a meeting held at the Finance Administrative Center at the office of Minister Guy Joseph, along with the Minister for Physical Development and the Chair of the Development Control Authority, with the developer's spouse, and that the legal representative of the developer was asked not to attend? 8. Is it also true that there is another development application currently pending for a much larger villa on the same property and within the same policy area 1C? In addition to providing truthful and full disclosure regarding the development, this matter needs immediate attention, not the usual public relations stance of the government. The St. Lucia Labour Party calls on the government to take immediate action to prevent the endangerment of the PMA's World Heritage status. An immediate stop notice should be issued, and all the relevant information should be provided to the PMAC. The government should dispense with the secrecy and engage the people of St. Lucia on what they would deem as an acceptable solution given this offensive blunder. I thank you.
St. Lucia, you have heard a number of questions levied at this government, and in particular, Honorable Herod Stanislas. Sister Emma, we, beyond this, this nightmare, I think, that a lot of St. Lucians are facing right now with just the scar on PTB on Gopito. I mean, it's just on top of infraction after infraction of this government. I understand that in Soufrière itself, organizations and institutions set up to protect St. Lucians, and more in particular, the people of Soufrière, have been undermined. Could you speak to that for us?
Yes, Mondi. When you look at the Soufrière Development Foundation, a very important institution for the people of Soufrière, and an institution, if properly managed, could be emulated by other constituencies.
Was emulated.
Yes, to manage the resources of the people. These are the assets, the Pito area, the Sulphur Springs, the harbor, they all belong to the people of Soufrière. And I mean the Soufrière constituency, I mean not Soufrière Tongue alone, but the entire constituency. Fauché-Jacques, the people of Mont-Lacroix, up to last night I was with the people at Mont-Lacroix, the people at Fontainebleau. It belongs, the people of Itangs, people of Chateau-Belay, they own this, the foundation manages the resources of Soufrière. it is an important institution. I believe one of the things that we need to address quickly is the whole issue of the management, the board. Who is represented on the board? At the moment, the foundation is registered as an NGO. We need to look at that structure again. We need to look at that structure, and we need to see how they are managing the resources. At the moment, the resources are everywhere. I'm told about 60% of the resources of the foundation is spent on wages. The projects, well, how do you develop? Because it has a mandate to develop the Soufrière area. And it is a very important mandate. How is that happening? It's not happening. Because, for example, you have the foundation in the past assisting parents with school children, giving them scholarships, books, school shoes, uniforms. And this year, I mean, everybody comes to my office, well, the foundation just called me, I cannot get the shoes, I cannot get the bag, I cannot get the books. And I think, and you hear all types of stories about mismanagement of funds. This one stole this one was given a loan for that, this loan was written off, and a whole set of infractions, and just poor, bad management, and not a good example of proper governance. And all of it, Honorable Stanislas must be held responsible because he's assigned to it. He has his father on the board. He has his friends on the board. He's just changed the chairman to another friend. I mean, we just have to understand for Soufrière and for all of St. Lucia, the management of our resources is paramount. We have limited resources and we need to manage it properly. And we need to do it in an ethical manner. And I'm just saying that we need to set examples. And I've said it, when I become the parliamentary rep of Soufrière, the persons who have mismanaged the funds, or who have stolen, or do whatever, should be held accountable. We need to set examples. Now, when you look at, there's another institution, the Soufrière Marine Management Authority, another very significant structure. I think when you look at, and you have to correct me, PSA, it is maybe one of the few marine management institutions in the region.
Yeah, and in globally as well.
Yes, and it's been looked at well,
for its performance.
And well respected. Yeah. And we are not paying the type of attention that we ought to. Because if properly managed, I'm told that it is closed. Because when you pass there, I mean, I know there are
big locks on it.
There are locks there, so we do not know what is happening. But at the same time, you have the grey water from the beach park just getting on to
the catchment, from the whole Palmes
for area.
Catchment, yeah, all of that is coming.
You know, they've constructed the beach park, but they've not dealt with that. So you have a whole melange of pollution going straight into the bay, and really, we need to address these issues because
you know what I see happening there, Sister Emma and Monday. I think there is a bigger problem to this. It is a breakdown of our institutional framework. And Soufrière is just a microcosm, a microcosm of all what, but it's a bigger national problem.
Well, exactly. It started from the top.
Yeah, it's a bigger national problem. Look at what has happened to the National Trust.
Yes. And
the undermining of the St. Lucia National Trust, right? In Soufrière right now, what you have, and Sister Emma rightly pointed out, there is a problem of good governance. Yeah. There is a problem of good governance. And the Peto management area, there is a management framework to deal with it. And that management framework has two basic, let's say three major components. The institutional component, there is the legal regulatory component, and then there is the operational technical aspects, which is to deal with the professionals and the technical issues of facilitating developments or not, and so on. The legal aspect is pretty much sound. In other words, the legislative and regulatory framework that is on the ground, not just through the LACs and so on, but also the Physical Planning and Development Act, the various pieces of legislation on the agriculture, on the fisheries, etc. So all of that is there, and all of that operates within to manage the Piton.
Okay.
I think there's a...
Yes. Good evening, caller.
Hello, good evening.
Hi,
Hi,
good
good
evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Bonsoir Martin, bonsoir Emma, bonsoir Mondi.
Bonsoir, bonsoir.
Bon, mon kay essayer faire contribution moi en créole
Sans problème.
parce que moi vle plus moun qui possible comprendre bagay ça là. Bon, ma kay dit qu'on Martin l'histoire bagay ça là. N'a just dit yon des bagay
Oh, do you know?
pour un chay moun sa comprendre bagay ça là. En 2015, un avocat écrit Dr. Anthony, il a été Premier ministre Saint-Lucie. Et il dit Dr. Anthony, il a écrit pour un monde qui a représenté parce que moun nan voulait acheter terre en place Gopiton et puis ça fait un Kaila. OK? Ça c'était en l'année 2015, en octobre. Dr. Anthony répond, échangé, il était Premier ministre en temps ça là. Il répond et qui dit qu'on well oui, nous n'a pas acheté terre, mais changer, nous n'a ni pour faire ça et ni pour faire pour ça l'autorisation pour build Kaila, et bien pour faire Kaila.
Pour construire.
Pour construire Kaila en area Gopiton en quick acheter terre. Il partait, c'est ouais ça, il partait dit bagay pour avocat nom nan pas comprendre, il dit bagay là simplement pour avocat et moun qui a représenté là comprendre ça. OK?
Oui, je comprends. Non, pour là.
Bon. Monsieur allé, il acheté terre. Nous pas rien dit ça après ça. Rien dit ça. Mais en l'année 2017, nous ouais en application faite, même avocat ça là, il fait une application, by mettre et bien mettre même fait application et il voit c'est l'autorité qui a responsabilité pour bailler permission pour construire et bien pour faire construire en area go Piton. L'autorité ça là c'est DCA Development, ça nous a créé en anglais Development Control Authority.
Oui.
DCA répond et dit qu'on non, nous pas qu'à avoir permission pour certaines raisons. Parce que si nous quittons construire un rien là, il faut aller contre un study qui était fait comme tuer, bagay comme ça, pas ça fait en area au Piton.
Ouais.
OK?
Ouais.
Bon. Après ça, nous pas rien. Après ça, nous pas ni pièce record pièce rien qui a dit qu'on moun ça là, voyez l'autre application, nous pas rien en sa public là pour qu'on rien. Mais aujourd'hui à présent, nous attendons ministre Harold Stanislaus, ministre pour physical planning, qu'a venu dire qu'on qu'a fait public la comprendre. Kenyan Tony fait toute qualité bagaille, il a été premier ministre, il vend terre, il fait ci, il fait ça. Et il a fait nous comprendre that this year, même Development Control Authority qui supposé bail permission il dit qu'on DCA JD cabinet. Tant parole,
Oui.
il dit DCA JD cabinet. Pour cabinet, ça va permission. Pour monsieur, ça construit Kaili à sous Gopiton. Bon, regardez ça. DCA qui supposé bail permission. C'est ça DCA là pour. Parce qu'en première application, c'est DCA qui dit non. Nous pas qu'à bail permission. So, comment à présent, ministre Harold Stanislaus veut nous comprendre that DCA JD cabinet pour bail monsieur à permission. Bon, ça n'a pas faire science. Parce que si c'est DCA qui s'y pose bail permission, et bien pas bail permission, comment à présent, ou qu'a dit nous, yo JD cabinet pour bail ces moun permission. Ça n'a pas faire pièce science. Bon, à présent encore, nous attendons that à pas d'application ça là, qui fait en 2017. Là, il n'y a plus d'application qui fait.
Ouais, c'est ça, mon comprendre.
Et d'ici à dire, pas de pièce permission. Bon, comment nous pouvons attendre ces bagages là? Comment ces bagages là? Harold Stanislaus pas qu'à dire nous ces bagages là? Comment le gouvernement pas qu'à dire nous ces bagages là? Nous voulons connaître ces bagages là. Bon, n'a dit autres, moi-même, hier, moi crié, ça autres dit, ça autres crié, PMA, PMAC.
Ouais.
Ça y est, encore.
Bureau PMA.
PMA, oui.
Ouais.
Bureau PMA. Moi, crié office là. Et un monde là fait mon comprendre. Regardez-moi. Massadou en rien about ça c'est moun ça là. Kadi tout ça moi ça dou c'est nous bail d'ici recommandation. Et recommandation nous bail d'ici c'est pour dire nous pas d'accord pour pièce building fait en gros piton.
Ouais.
Bon, moun nan dit moi
Ou ça, peut-être un autre monde voulait couiller, ou ça round up à
oui.
ouais.
Moun nan dit moi c'est pas yo qui a fait décision. C'est DCA yo ça honnête bail DCA recommandation. So c'est DCA qui n'est pour point décision à sous ça. Mais Harold Stanislaus a fait mon comprendre DCA JD yo et dit yo ça bail permission.
Ouais.
So qui ça nous a fait comme pays?
Ouais, quand moi comprendre ça regarder hein.
So à présent, moi juste finir ça, s'il vous plaît. So à présent, nous ni un gros malin, un gros bobo qui a fait un sous gros piton. Tale isam nous kay ped status
ça c'est problème là. Ça c'est problème. Ça c'est problème. Ouais.
À présent.
Ça c'est problème.
Merci.
Voilà merci pour changement parce depuis là tout comment qu'a guaté moi ça dit anti mot créole là. Parce que Saudi là ou a sous bouton là parce que situation c'est pas juste seulement ça qui a fait là ou ça. C'est qui conséquence bagay ça kayni. Peut-être parce que si yon construction passée, ça mène pour dire, ça nous a créé en anglais, precedence.
Oui.
So, un l'autre monde ça venu, un l'autre encore ça venu, et puis peut-être, la plus go. So, ça c'est un problème, et puis, situation PMA, et puis, là.
Okay, so we have another call. Good night, caller.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Something people don't seem to have mentioned about this whole business so far is now, during my life, I have bought several properties, and before you sign on the dotted line, you do a variety of searches. Your lawyer will say, yes, but there's this restriction on the land. And I cannot believe that, was it the developer's lawyer did not say to him, now you may have trouble building there. Yes,
I get where you're going with this.
You cannot believe that.
Putting this on the buyer himself. Did he not realise that the pitons and also one of the properties I bought in England was in a conservation area.
That's right.
And I found myself being very happy it was in a conservation area, but just for what was a relatively ordinary house, the list of restrictions on it was a yard long, but you make your choice, don't you? And what I'm trying not to say is, in spite of all these restrictions, the only thing I can imagine is that the buyer was told, oh, don't worry about all those. Just give us a little help towards our campaign funds. Thank you.
Perhaps, thank you, caller.
Wow.
So perhaps that was we know there was secret meetings.
Well, I will not
You don't
for
want to
now.
go there,
At least
but-
we would want
These are
some
questions
measure
that we would like answered.
some
That's
measure
right.
of disclosure.
Disclosure, and that is why the statement is calling on
But that's a good point. The
on the
caller is
minister.
making.
But he's yes.
Yeah.
Good night, callers.
Good night.
SLP Town Hall Tuesday.
Yes, good evening.
Hi.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, bonsoir.
Yes, bonsoir. Very enlightening program.
you.
The thing is, Mr. Satney, Auntie Emma, and Mandy, that there is a government that is bereaved in confusion. I say this because toute manière moi gouvernement ça ka appuyer mais ka c'est un gouvernement qui ka appuyer en pagal. Avec ça yo ka fait yo ka fait un chai bay comme un chance si bagay ça, because you are saying to me that this administration know exactly what it is the pitons to St. Lucia.
That's right.
To St. Lucia.
Yeah.
And
That's
to
right.
have that and to come around and spin. And you see, it is just not that, it is a total disrespect that this administration have had to St. Lucians. According, nous c'est un pays vai-ti-vai, nous avons vu ça dehors et puis pour ça. Because when that thing started and the bow tie man went on a charade to attack and to discredit the National Trust, I asked myself, how much can we take? Because it was just a couple of weeks. There was 2 lawyers on a particular radio station calling, and he would not stop there. And that, and in closing, Martin, I do not want to hang the line.
Yeah, somebody
Something which
might be.
has become to ache me, because there are media houses that are in bed with this government. For instance, look at what had happened at La Paradise when that situation arose with the National Trust. They all came back and attacked Mr. Tulsi. Up to a day like today, I'm at liberty to say that HTS have the tip, and they have not released the tip to see what Mr. Tulsi said, along with the late Peter Ernest at that time.
Let me tell you, I was the PS at the time too,
Yeah.
So I'm aware of the. As a matter of fact, when this project came in, that investment came in, I was the PS at the time. it was managed late, passed on later to another PS, deceased.
I cannot understand,
PS Jules.
Mr. Satney, is that this UWP has allowed to escape with murder, and I consider right now, with what has been happening and what is passing for governance, that this government, when this government will be booted out of power, that some of those persons should be charged for treason. Thank you.
Yeah, let me put it short and sweet, caller. The chaos is
the order of the day.
Is one form of but it's a form of management.
Management, exactly.
Yeah, chaos. Some people thrive on it, and therefore this is blatant. And what it is because, especially if you hold back information, if the communication there isn't proper communication and effective communication taking place with and among the various stakeholders, the key stakeholders, chaos thrives, and therefore it is very easy to divide and rule and I think basically we have a very serious problem of institutional capacity in St. Lucia, and it is, and the Soufre situation, I'm very afraid. Sister Emma, you certainly will have a major challenge. Sister Emma, Mogado, problème là où kay ni Soufouye, et puis c'est diverses organisations. Là, il y a un chay travail qui n'est pas fait. SMMA, c'est une organisation qui a une réputation internationale. Et puis travail là il a fait et puis souffrir et puis c'est pêcheur et puis c'est bot c'est mon qui petit bâtiment yo pour touristes comme ça ça bien et puis pour nous ça vier mener ces bail ça en ordre
et pour monde d'accord
en whole révision étude ni pour faire pour nous ça vieux régler ces bails ça
pour nous respecter loi il y en a l'autre
et puis pour peuple là ça ouais yo ka joindre un bénéfice c'est jeunesse là c'est pêcheurs c'est taxi driver c'est travailleurs c'est hôtel là tous ces monde ça c'est single mothers là tous ces monde ça là ni en chay pauvreté là ni en chay problème souffrir et puis nous et puis au cas ni pour mettre assurer que toutes ces bases sont réglées. Parce que si ou pas réglées,
Martin, we have the right person for the job.
Non, c'est ça qui fait me regarder. C'est ça qui fait me regarder en d'avance ou ça.
Well, parce que ou ka parler bay c'est moun, ou ka aller abo ou ka descendre regarder tout monde ou parler bay ka di fondation ça la insurrection. Tout le monde ou parler bay ka do souple ranger Soufre Foundation. Everybody, Timamay, Gwan moun ti connaît management, tout le monde cadeau, là ni problème en foundation.
Moi t'en dis fond Soufre Regional Development Foundation c'est qu'on ATM.
Well, moi quoi mais actuellement là il s'en met pas ATM encore because the ATM na low pani là pas ça fait 4 là quoi. Et ça c'est ouais bah donc oui mais ça bagay ti c'est oui là on est bagay ça là on est quantité moun ti ka travail là, yo ka voyer moun là kayo, yo ka bay moun information type pas douette. Oui et puis c'est gens et puis yo ka manger et moi parler ben chez moun là moi dit que ça c'est moun supposé respectable en communauté pas mettre cause autre là because là nous sous l'homme de là et puis nous joindre ou faire bagaille type pas bon nous ka demander pour payer pour lui. Pas dire si nous connaître ou pas connaître dès pour faire bagaille type pas ouais ou ka taper corps ou ka payer pour lui. Bon, quand on dit SMMA, c'est un bagage qui, comment ça, il y a un chay manière, il s'est développé, rôle là. Et puis, là, il y a un chay travail déjà fait, un chay study déjà fait. Qui manière nous ça prend ça nous nie, qui manière nous ça ajouter et puis l'autre organisation internationale, et qui manière nous ça fait au vini, apprendre ça nous qu'a fait là faire c'est mon qui venir ouais c'est petit hôtel là tout bagaille fait économie souffrir à viller lever Allez, nous ne pouvons commencer à faire travail là, nous ne pouvons faire. Mais pour faire, Jean Soufouye ni pour comprendre, nous ni pour faire ensemble. Nous pas ça faire progrès si nous pas gourmet et a l'autre. Nous pas ça faire progrès si nous pas garder et puis faire décision sur l'intérêt tout pays. C'est pas ça qui est l'intérêt famille et puis gens. Nous ni pour faire pour garder qui manière nous s'amener Soufouye monter. Piton nous ni pour ajouter et puis Harold ni pour payer pour gal salaire immédiat à sous Piton. Because c'est un gal limité là.
Sister Emma, you know, the task ahead for you in Soufrière, not insurmountable. And
no,
you are no stranger to the task. Not. You turned over the NIC, made it, you know, people were able to have their pension, which now is again being used as another ATM for this government. But St. Lucia, all hope is not lost. The St. Lucia Labour Party continues to work for the people of St. Lucia, and we will continue to put you first. Honorable Philip J. Pierre has made pronouncements on the way forward for St. Lucia by the St. Lucia Labour Party with regards to the development on and around the Peter area. So we'll take a clip from the Babino opening, which happened on Sunday, and let's listen to Honorable Philip J. Pierre on his pronouncements from the St. Lucia Labour Party.
So what do we have this afternoon? We have a United Workers' Party that is scared. The latest scare is they are running some story about we give people permission to build on the pitons. Now once you see the United Workers' Party begin to react like that, you know they're afraid. Once they begin to behave like that, they are afraid. So what they do is you got point devant avant devant point yo. And the way your point devant is they take Herod, what's his name, and they decide that they're going to go to the pitons to say that the Labour Party gave people permission to build on the pitons. I want you to read and look carefully at the letters that they have circulating on social media. The letter from Kenny Anthony says nothing about building on any piton. What the letter says is that it gives developmental status. And what that means is that any investment that's happening in Soufrière at the time would have got that status. Status not to pay duties, etc. And the letter gave the development status, but it said it must have the approval. It must have the approval before anything happens. No letter said that they could go ahead and build on any piton. No letter said that they could do any road on the piton. What it gave, and I think it's only for 6 months, it gave the status. So that means if the project was approved by the DCA, if the project had got DCA approval, then they would have got the stamp duty, etc. If it got approval, and that is what's important. Kenny Anthony did not give them approval. He said if it got approval from the DCA. There is nothing wrong with that. But moving forward, this new Labour Party government, moving forward, we have to consider what will happen to all these lands in the PME. We have to consider, and it might become important where the Labour Party may have to say that we will acquire all these lands so nobody can build anything on these lands in the future. That is what we may have to say. That is what we may have to look at. We may have to look at. But don't take any blame for the United Workers' Party. You don't know who give who what. You don't know who collect what under the table. You know nothing about that. We didn't give any approval to build any building on the pitons or where they built it. We never did that. But going forward, our government will have to look at all the lands in that area and decide where anything can go on that area going forward.
And say, Lucia, there you have it. This is the statement that you expect from a leader. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of conversation on the way forward that we expect from a leader. And you heard it from Honorable Philip J. Pierre that the next Labour Party government will look into acquiring the lands for the pitons because they are ours. Ms. Hippolyte, what is your thoughts? And as we wrap up, really on the development of piton, what it means going forward for the people of Soufrière?
Well, Monday I was interviewed, I think the day of the opening of the building.
Yes.
And I think the gentleman is with DBS, and I'm even without consulting my political leader, I spoke as a St. Lucian and somebody from Soufrière, and that was my position. Look, if you have a developer in there and if he is doing things that is not within the rules, government acquire. Full stop. No point debating that question. The piton belongs to us. It is us. It is part of us. Anywhere in the world, as a St. Lucian, anywhere you reach, as long as you see these two peaks, you know that is you. And we should do nothing to contaminate. We should do nothing at all to contaminate the pitons. So anybody misbehaving on that point, put them to rest. Yes. Put the point to rest, and we should make no bones about it, irrespective of who is or not. And if Herod, the people of Soufrière, should make Herod and will make Herod pay for him insulting the pitons as he has done, insulting the people of Soufrière. And the people of Soisel should cause Bradley to pay, because both of them know what they did.
Yes.
And they have remained quiet about it. And our Prime Minister, he is heading all of that. He has done enough to insult the people of St. Lucia. He has done enough. He has done it with the SH by giving our lands. He has done it with Cabot. He has done it with others. And now he has allowed this piton thing to go on. He has allowed it to go on, and he's aware of it. And the Honorable Prime Minister should know that when you are representing a people and you are part of a people, you have to respect the people. And he's showing from all of that he's not respecting us, and he's causing his entire cabinet not to respect St. Lucia and St. Lucians. And that is bad news.
Thank you, Sister Emma.
That's bad news.
Mr. Satni, any closing remarks?
I'll just wrap up and say, going forward, there is need for a complete review of the institutional situations, the organizational management and operational aspects that is taking place as it relates to the piton management area. And it's not just the question of the PMA office. That's not what it is. There is a whole gamut of organizations that relate to it. Soufrière Regional Development Foundation, because they manage assets within the PMA. The SMMA, it also manages assets within the PMA. You have a litany of beneficiaries, from fishers to taxi drivers to hotel workers, restaurant persons who own restaurants, persons who own properties, and so on. I think the time has come for us to begin to look forward and begin to consider how, especially post-COVID, how do we preserve and enhance the value of this asset for the good and benefit of not just current our present people, but also future generations. There are the challenges of climate change. There are the challenges. There are the challenges of global warming. There are the issues, the local social and economic challenges in around not just Soufrière, Font-Saint-Jacques, Soisel, Canries, that whole corridor of people who in one way or the other interface with the piton management area and benefit directly or indirectly from it. And we need to revisit this situation and see how we can create an environment so that the young persons not only understand better what
and
appreciate, right, the asset value of this and how it is part and parcel of the national soul of the people of Soufrière, the people of Soisel, the people of St. Lucia.
Sure.
And it has to be protected by all means necessary. Okay? Yes. And it's not about, it cannot be compromised, cannot be negotiated, particularly in accordance with the limits of acceptable change study.
But I just want to add as well, within all of that, and I agree with you there, Martin, we need to start even putting special committees together now. I'm one who believe we need to plan. You don't wait after election when you're in office, or that time runs. I believe we need to put special committees, people with the right background and knowledge together to start looking. One of the things we have to start looking at is how do we generate, as you rightly said, post-COVID, all these assets that we have, what are the possibilities of generating revenue from them? What are some of the things that we can do differently to what we have done in the past?
And a policy of sustainable tourism.
Yes.
Because tourism is what, like I said before, 8 out of every 10 visitors who come to St. Lucia goes through the Piton, goes to Soufrière and the Piton management area.
And even before that,
it's universal value from a natural standpoint is also demonstrated socially, economically as well. So there is value to all the key stakeholders, and private sector and
one of the things we've been discussing as well, and you rightly said it, if 8 out of 10 visitors comes to Soufrière, they don't stay there, but what are some of the things? Look at the structure of tourism. Look at the structure of tourism. Not what is some of the benefits to John public in Soufrière?
In Soufrière,
the ordinary folk.
Yeah.
And this is an issue that we have to put front and center.
Front burner.
Yes.
Front and center.
Well, St. Lucia, we are way over our time tonight. This issue, again, who did this and who did what, and it's very clear that this government continues to be a stranger to the truth. But one thing is clear, and the people of St. Lucia are letting their voices be heard on this matter, that the Pitons are ours. They belong to us. They are sacred, and we want no development on that area. I see a petition going around, and I see it has already garnered close to 2,000 signatures in a day. And this is the power that you have, St. Lucia, to say no to the things that destroy, defile us as a people. So you have the commitment from a St. Lucia Labour Party going forward that if you cannot play within the rules, that you have to go. That if you cannot respect what is ours as St. Lucians, you have to go. It will not be tolerated, and that St. Lucia will be preserved for St. Lucia and for the many generations to come. That St. Lucia is the commitment of a St. Lucia Labour Party. I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight on a very informative program. A lot of education needs to be had in St. Lucia. There's not enough time, definitely, to go through the issues and really educate our society on the things that belong to us and how we can protect it. But St. Lucia, this is the last for tonight's Town Hall Tuesday. I would like to thank my guest for joining us. And we can continue this discussion on Facebook and in the social sphere on the airwaves, because this government has not given us a commitment on the way forward. So we have to keep on the issue. St. Lucia.
Just lying and expecting the thing to go away.
So thank you, Sister Emma, for joining us. I know the people of Soufrière Force Jacques will have a great parliamentary representative in you. And thank you, Mr. Satney, for your service to St. Lucia. And we can hear your passion as you speak about our patrimony,
national service,
and our country. St. Lucia, again, good evening, and thank you for joining us for another SLP Town Hall Tuesday. Good night.
Good night, St. Lucia.
Good night, everyone.